Zodiac signs and their toxic traits. Check timestamps for your sign. Aries. One unhealthy pattern they fall into is reacting before reflecting. In relationships, they can turn hurt into sharpness, impatience, or conflict instead of admitting what got under their skin. They push intensity into the room quickly, then struggle to slow down once emotions are running hot. Underneath that pattern is fear of feeling powerless, dismissed, or less cared for than they expected. What they rarely admit is that they want reassurance more than another fight. Their toxic trait is not only anger, it is letting impulse speak before vulnerability gets a chance. Taurus. Their most difficult pattern tends to be digging in too deeply once they feel hurt or uncertain. In relationships, they can become stubborn, emotionally immovable, and resistant to repair, even when part of them still wants closeness. Instead of talking through the shift, they may hold on to resentment, go quiet, and make softness harder to reach. Underneath that pattern is fear of instability, betrayal, and opening up just to be disappointed again. What they rarely admit is how much they want to feel safe before they feel right. Their toxic trait is not just stubbornness, it is staying closed after honesty was needed. Gemini. What makes relationships harder with them is how easily they can slip into inconsistency when emotions get too serious. They may keep the conversation going, joke through tension, or act engaged while quietly avoiding the real issue underneath. Instead of staying present with discomfort, they can scatter their energy, send mixed signals, and leave the other person unsure where they stand. Underneath that pattern is fear of being trapped, misunderstood, or emotionally cornered before they are ready. What they rarely admit is that avoidance feels easier than exposure. Their toxic trait is not just unpredictability, it is using movement to dodge emotional depth. Cancer. Emotionally, they can slip into expecting people to feel what they refuse to say clearly. In relationships, they may withdraw, go quiet, or become moodier when hurt instead of naming the disappointment. Then resentment builds because they wanted tenderness, understanding, or reassurance without having to ask for it. Underneath that pattern is fear of seeming needy, unprotected, or too emotionally exposed. What they rarely admit is that they often want to be met before they can explain themselves. Their toxic trait is not simply sensitivity, it is making others guess at wounds they are too scared to voice. Leo. One unhealthy pattern they fall into is letting pride block repair. In relationships, they can become defensive, colder, or overly focused on proving they are fine when what they really feel is bruised, overlooked, or emotionally unimportant. Instead of admitting the wound directly, they may protect their image so hard that softness never gets back into the room. Underneath that pattern is fear of rejection, embarrassment, and caring more than the other person does. What they rarely admit is how deeply they need to feel chosen. Their toxic trait is not just ego, it is protecting the heart by refusing to show where it was hurt. Virgo. Their most difficult pattern is turning emotional discomfort into criticism, correction, or impossible standards. In relationships, they may focus on what is wrong, what changed, or what could be done better instead of speaking from the softer feeling underneath. That can make closeness feel tense, managed, or harder to relax into. Underneath that pattern is fear of losing control, being disappointed, or not feeling secure enough to stay emotionally open. What they rarely admit is how anxious they become when something important feels unstable. Their toxic trait is not simply being critical, it is using control to avoid honest emotion. Libra. What often poisons relationships for them is avoiding conflict until resentment quietly takes over. They may stay pleasant, agreeable, and emotionally smooth on the surface while internally keeping score of what felt unfair, unbalanced, or disappointing. Instead of addressing the issue directly, they can delay honesty so long that the connection starts weakening underneath the politeness. Underneath that pattern is fear of rejection, disharmony, and being the one who makes things ugly. What they rarely admit is that peace matters so much because tension affects them deeply. Their toxic trait is not just avoidance. It is letting silence do damage while pretending everything is fine. Scorpio. One unhealthy pattern they fall into is testing, controlling, or withholding instead of trusting openly. In relationships, they can become more guarded, suspicious, and emotionally intense once vulnerability starts feeling dangerous. Rather than saying they feel scared, insecure, or deeply affected, they may close off and watch everything more closely while revealing less. Underneath that pattern is fear of betrayal, powerlessness, and being hurt where it matters most. What they rarely admit is how badly they want loyalty to feel unquestionable. Their toxic trait is not just intensity, it is using control to replace the trust they are afraid to give. Sagittarius. Their most difficult relationship pattern is escaping emotional accountability when things start feeling too heavy. They may become inconsistent, detached, or overly casual right when the connection needs more presence, not less. Instead of sitting with uncomfortable feelings, they can joke past them, distance themselves, or act like freedom means not having to answer for emotional impact. Underneath that pattern is fear of being trapped, overwhelmed, or consumed by feelings they cannot control quickly. What they rarely admit is that deeper closeness can make them feel exposed. Their toxic trait is not just restlessness. It is leaving emotional mess behind while insisting they meant no harm. Capricorn. What makes relationships harder with them is how easily self-protection turns into emotional withholding. They can stay composed, responsible, and seemingly unaffected while quietly locking the softer truth away where nobody can reach it. Instead of admitting hurt, need, or uncertainty, they may become colder, more distant, and more focused on control than connection. Underneath that pattern is fear of vulnerability being mishandled or used against them later. What they rarely admit is how much they need safety before softness can show. Their toxic trait is not simply being guarded, it is letting restraint become a wall love cannot get through. Aquarius. Emotionally, they can slip into detaching so hard that the relationship starts feeling like it is being handled instead of felt. They may go distant, shift into logic, or become harder to reach the moment emotions get messier than they know how to process. Instead of staying present with discomfort, they can protect themselves through space that slowly turns into emotional absence. Underneath that pattern is fear of being controlled, misunderstood, or pushed into vulnerability before trust feels solid. What they rarely admit is that distance often hides real feeling, not the lack of it. Their toxic trait is using detachment as protection until closeness feels impossible. Pisces. Their most difficult pattern is escaping reality when emotions get too heavy to hold cleanly. In relationships, they can avoid hard truths, romanticize what is hurting them, or drift into confusion instead of facing the situation directly. That can make the connection feel blurry, inconsistent, or emotionally overwhelming for both people involved. Underneath that pattern is fear of conflict, disappointment, and fully seeing what the heart does not want to lose. What they rarely admit is how badly they want love to stay softer than it really is. Their toxic trait is not just avoidance. It is letting fantasy delay the honesty that healing needs. Thank you for watching the video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments box. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to get all the updates.